Welcome to the Inside Out podcast. I'm Michelle, a life coach, nutritional therapist, leader in run fitness, and the host of this show. My purpose is to share with you wisdom and experiences from inspirational people, fellow entrepreneurs, and my own life journey to help you grow and elevate your health and well-being from inside and out. I am absolutely super excited to welcome Teresa and Victoria to this week's show, two highly experienced athletes, phenomenal wives and mothers to gorgeous children, and both work full-time in very demanding roles and have been so supportive and inspiring to my own running journey. This week, we're going to be talking all about marathon and ultra running, what the key differences are, if you're wishing to make the transition, what you may need to consider, but more important, hearing in their journey and how they've managed the transition, the juggling of life, and supporting themselves holistically to achieve their goals. So without further ado, please welcome Teresa and Victoria.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi there.
So to start us off, for all our listeners, could you share a little bit more about you and how your running journey started?
Do you want to start, T?
So for me, I was sort of probably one of the least sporty children ever. I didn't particularly enjoy PE, and I was just generally rubbish at every sport going. When I was 15, my mum decided she was going to run the London Marathon, and she entered and she got in straight away, which is a very rare thing to happen. My dad had a friend who was a big runner and cyclist, and he offered to help mum with her training. So mum used to drag me out on her training run. So I remember doing her very first mile with her, and then at the weekends I would join her, this friend of the family, Rainer, and do sort of like 5-6 miles, and then that was it. And then for me, I probably didn't think about running or anything until about another 15 years later, when I moved to London and thought, oh, I'd like to do the London Marathon.
And Victoria, how about yourself?
Well, I suppose I was quite a sporty child. So sort of at senior school, I was in every team sort of going, and enjoyed that. And then went to university and found beer and boys, as you do. And the group of friends I was with weren't that sporty, so just sort of fell by the wayside in what I was doing. And similar in the same sense that, Teresa, you said you'd moved to London. You were like, I want to do the London Marathon. I'd always said, I want to do the London Marathon. And in 2004, just after I'd watched it, I was like, right, I'm going to do it next year. And in the same sense, having no idea how difficult it is to get into it, but you're just like, that's me. I'm going to do that. And kind of the rest is history.
That's amazing. So theoretically, the inspiration was basically from watching superb athletes and virtually non-athletes at the London Marathon that have just decided to sign up for the challenge and lucky enough to get started. So that inspired you, but how did your actual journey evolve? What was your first sort of like milestone from the start, and how did that sort of like over time you managed to then go, right, I've decided on the marathon? But did you just like sign up for a marathon, or did you build yourself up? What sort of things did you do?
So for me, like I said, I'd moved to London and I decided it was something sort of I really wanted to do, London Marathon. And I didn't have a clue when it came to running. So I joined a local running club. I joined Ealing, Southall and Middlesex. And the first thing they said to me was, give it time, don't enter a marathon straight away. So I think it was probably about a year later. So I'd done a few various cross countries and other events, sort of 10Ks, probably half marathons, 10 milers. And then about a year later, I tried for London, didn't get in, but I opted for the club place, and I was just really fortunate. that I then got a club place, and I think that was in 2003. So yeah, that's when I did my first marathon.
Yeah, and I at that point was working at BT, and there was a small gym in our sort of in the basement of the office, and there were some guys that went out running from the gym. So I started doing that, and then kind of got to know sort of the two Marks who ran the gym, and Rob, who was one of the runners, and we used to run together. And obviously you talk about everything on a run, and I said, this is what I want to do. And Rob said, oh, you should have a look at my old running club, Gate Valley Harriers, which is how we all know each other. And he'd moved away, but he'd said, he gave me some names of people who said go down and do that. So I was already on the journey to be doing the marathon. I'd got the place before I even joined the club. So there was, no one saying don't do a marathon from your first bit from not doing anything. But yeah, I mean, it was quite interesting in that bit. But literally, it was almost the day after the London Marathon, or that was the Sunday, and kind of but on the Monday, I was like, right, okay, I'm going to go out and start focusing on the running. So I was doing runs at lunchtime.
It's quite interesting because obviously I've done a marathon, I've done a couple, got one coming up, haven't we? And you do get very sucked in with watching the London Marathon. And obviously everybody's running journey is different, but you both saw, I suppose, solace would be one word, from a running club and feeling part of the community. And I suppose in some respects, what would be your key message, about a running club for people? Because you've done a bit of running that you've just said. So would you say a lot of people think running clubs are very much for elite people, and did you feel out of place? And how would you, perhaps somebody listening to now going, yeah, I'm inspired, I want to do a marathon, and they're hearing that you got the support from a club, what type of thing would you say to them that they would get benefit from, and what might be some of the things that they want to look out for?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I thought it was just having a gang of like-minded people. I suppose you could say sort of my first club was myself, Rob, and the two Marks, running from the gym, and we were just a little gang of the four of us doing training. But that's only midweek, and that's dependent on everyone else's work schedules and various other pieces. The running club gives you much broader scope, introduces you to far more people, far more routes, and yeah, it's made some of my best friends through running. So
I think also it sort of introduces you to other things, like maybe a bit of track and speed work, which if you're just trying it for yourself, you wouldn't be doing that. You'd probably just be looking at those miles. And yeah, just hearing other people's stories and sharing things. So if something's bothering you, or something's not working for you, talking things through, getting advice on training plans. Yeah, there's so much knowledge in the clubs.
And so both of you inspired to do the London Marathon, and subsequently that's not been the only marathon you have done. Okay. So is there a particular marathon that really truly stands out for you both, and what kind of made that quite special to you?
I think it has to be London Festival, because as a child you grew up watching London Marathon every year on the telly, and going up to watch and support Mum on hers. It's not until you're up in London that you really get a sense of that atmosphere, and it's just incredible. And then one day you're on that start line and you're one of those bouncing heads. It's just surreal. Yes, it hurts, and you spend a lot of time running down Birdcage thinking, oh my God, why did I do this? Never again. But yeah, it's amazing. I think another one for me would be Man versus Horse Vic. I really loved.
That was awesome. Yeah. I love that. I mean, sadly, London definitely. And if I have to pick, I've done London 4 times. It would be London 2012. just to also have the medal. You know, was never going to be an Olympian, but just have a medal that says London 2012 on it. I also ran a good for age time there, so that was when a real kind of purple patch of the running. So I loved that. Other interesting ones. I actually enjoyed the first time we did Halstead, which was just a really small little marathon over in Essex, but I thoroughly enjoyed that. Stratford upon Avon marathon's really nice. Nottingham was good, but yeah, probably Man versus Horses the next one after that, because that was awesome fun.
So, I mean, most of the marathons that we all kind of connect to are road based. So, I suppose what inspired you to go more trail running, ultra running? And for those that don't know what we mean by sort of like trail running, ultra running, and sort of like the next part of your journey, can you just sort of help explain what that is?
I guess with the trails, it's just the variety of it. The fact that you could be running along a dirt path through the woods, you could be in shoe stealing mud, and then the next minute you're going up a rocky hill or a mountain. A trail just gives you that opportunity to stop, take in your surroundings. It's You get a better sort of sense of well-being, I think, as well with it.
Yeah.
You've not got the competitiveness with the marathon. With the marathon, everyone's on that start line and they're all hyped up and it's all about times. Whereas with the trail, you're on the start line and you're having a good old natter about what you ate for breakfast, and then you bump into someone at whatever checkpoint and you're on another natter, and it's a completely different experience.
Yeah, I'd echo that. And I think to say, how did we start on that? As a club, the summer routes are largely sort of trail based anyway, because obviously the ground's sort of drier. But actually, it was another mutual friend of ours, Claire, who joined the club not long after I did, who came with a real heritage of trail running, wanting to get out. And as soon as she kind of moved to the area, she got her OS map out. And we do actually, her nickname is Map, because she's generally found a route or done something. So our little kind of gang started more of that, and more people have come into the trails in the winter as well.
I know certainly from my experience, the trails, certainly the pressure is released, because the only, I suppose, real pressure is you and your achievements, and where you go, but certainly from a mental stability, it's to connect with nature and to take that pressure off, and to actually just be free, that you're not sitting there crying. You can cry, but it's not for a different reason, because you're in pain and can't complete 26.2 miles on a hard pavement. So I've certainly enjoyed going and inspiring to go to trail running, and it's thank you to both of yourselves that got me into that. I mean, for me, it was like, well, what's your first milestone for trail running? And it wasn't until somebody said, when I did my very first marathon, which was the New Forest Marathon, they went, well, that was trails. And I'm like, really? Okay, what's the difference? So I suppose really, where did you start with your trails? Was it you just started to do it, or did you start off with an event that you go, well, actually, I've done a couple of road marathons, it's been great, but now I want to get into trails, so I'll start off with a half marathon, a sort of like marathon? Or did you go completely feet first in, and an ultra as a definition is anything above 26.2 miles?
So for me, I think I did my first trail quite a few years back, because I did the Farnham. Oh, what's it called? Is it the Farnham Pilgrim? No,
the Pilgrim. Yeah,
Pilgrim, yeah.
The marathon.
Is that the multi-day event?
No. There was the Farnham Marathon. Oh gosh, I can't think what it's called now. It's a 26 mile. I did it quite a while back. And then I remember at the time doing it and thinking, oh my God, all these styles you had to climb over and everything. But I finished it thinking, oh, I really enjoyed that. But then it wasn't till sort of post kids, etc., and then started seeing Anita going out doing them all.
Yeah.
And I thought, she can do that. I could do it. And it was just kind of that next challenge for me. So then I started Googling, and then I found Race to the Stones. So that was, oh, I think I'll give that a go. And my husband said to me, what are you doing 100k for? That's stupid. Go for something shorter. But of course, I was like, well, no, because if they do it and finish it, I'm going to be really jealous. So I'm going to give it a go. And then I found Pilgrim, which was the 2-day one. And then decided to give that a go as like a warm-up or like a train to see, sort of give me a bit of a taster ready in advance for Race to the Stones. And well, yeah, it sort of cemented, it was everything I could have dreamt it to be, and I enjoyed it more than some of my road marathons. Yeah, and then I've just sort of ticked them off since then.
Victoria, how about yourself?
Well, I was going to say Teresa's gone far more on the, definitely going on to tick various bits off. I think my love for trails comes through a different route and comes through the cross country route. So, as I said, we're sporty at school, so I was part of the cross country team, and I've been desperately trying to, because it's only just occurred to me now, but trying to remember. I think it might have been in 1992, but it's around that. Our team, actually, our school team, got to the English schools cross country finals, so we did that. Wow. So we sadly we all had, or we're recovering from flu, so it definitely wasn't our finest outing over the full bit, but we did run a lot. So I was already really well versed in the short stuff, the mud, loving that, loving the racing against the landscape as well as each other piece. So when I joined the club, got heavily into our kind of cross country season. And obviously in prep for that, you were always out and about on the trails. Locally, we've got a number of races that are just pure trail based. You've got like the Hardwick Extreme, and you've got Herbert's Hole and things like that. So I was always trying to get and do those. And then a race did start, an off-road up in Leighton Buzzard, actually, the Dirt Half started kind of, I don't know, 10 years ago or maybe a bit more than that. So there were pieces you were doing, but I'd never really considered going above sort of marathon on a trail distance until Teresa started, and then we're still pretty resistant. It wasn't until we crewed for her on the 100, but that's kind of another bit of the story. But yeah, I guess that was my trail experience. It was just something I always loved doing, rather than thinking I've got to go and race this because it's trail.
You see, I'm quite curious because I think it's more of, when you go that further distance, it's first of all, like, really, what is the question that then poached you a further distance? So for me, it was very much, I'd done a couple of marathons. I got a good for age once I'd done in Amsterdam. But then I was not, something inside my heart, I suppose, was, and my stomach, it kind of went, yeah, that's okay, but I just don't feel that's my end. And that's when you guys inspired me to do the 50k, a local Chiltern one. And I found that being my first one, loved it, but also hated it, because I was in a flow and then you just stopped because of this amount of mud. And mentally I was like, but I'm in the zone. I'm in the zone here. I'm meeting loads of lovely people, and I'm having a nice chat, and a phrase from you is, it's mobile picnic. But I'm just going, I suppose, really, what came from you to say, actually, yeah, I've done my first sort of like bit of trail, but to go further, and certainly Teresa and Vic, you've crewed for Teresa, Snowdon, going up those mountains, the conditions, it's different altitudes. What inspired you to just go, yeah, let's give that a try, and then to keep going and ticking them off?
I don't know. It's just that seeing what next limit you can push yourself towards, because with it all, it is just a mental game. Your body is capable of so much more, and so many people out there have proved it. I guess with marathons, you're always against time, but with the ultra, you're against sort of what you're running on, and the weather conditions, and just how you feel. It's just so different. Yeah, and there's such a big feeling of satisfaction at the end. That's just really euphoric. Yeah, I don't know really. It's getting through those demons in your mind, because that's all it is.
Well, they say, don't they? It doesn't really matter, but it's when we talk about running or any physical challenge, it is 20% is the physical. Anybody can do the physical. It's your mental passion, power that then says whether or not you achieve. And the amount of people that I've come across that say, well, I don't like running. Okay, we'll do swimming then. You know, there will be something that will suit your lifestyle. It's you, the training bit's the easy bit, if it with a little bit of planning. It's the mental stability. You know, going for an open water swim in the UK is really, really cold compared to perhaps yeah, this is me that I'm trying to overcome as one of my ambitions, is to, you know, try and push myself that little bit further and do something slightly outside the comfort zone.
It's also about having your why, isn't it? Knowing your why you're doing it, and that's what gets you to that finish line as well.
I think that why is important, and I think, you know, Teresa will be far too modest, but her mental strength is absolutely phenomenal. So I've crewed for her twice on the 200 she's done. 2 100s. We've not yet gone to a 200, but we are joking about it. And so North Downs, which was her first 100, she had a horrible sort of trip around 30 miles and basically smashed her face up. And when she got to Claire and I, it was all we could do for, you know, kind of over the top of her head. She's sitting above us. We're like, what the bloody hell are we going to do here? She's, you know, she's a mess. And she did 74 miles from, you know, having smashed her face up and carried on that way. And we all learned a huge amount on that 100, and it was a case of getting you to the line. But when you started talking about, I want to do the South Downs, we're going to do that, we were better crew. You know, you were a much better athlete. You know, you'd learned much more about how you were dealing with nutrition and the various other pieces. But this time nature put in a different spin. And this time was like the hottest day of the year. And the South Downs, it's chalk downland, so there's a lot of obviously reflection off it. And it was extreme. I mean, it was phenomenally hot. You were in, you know, at like 3 a.m. when I was running with Teresa, we were still in shorts and t-shirts. We were absolutely roasting. It was so warm. And just to have got through that heat, and there were so many people dropped out, you know, and really, you know, serious cases of heat exhaustion and all sorts, you know, elite athletes, all sorts of people. And the mental strength for her to get, and there was a point when she, you know, Claire had just come in with you, and you basically rang up Chris and I were like, you can't do it. And Claire was going, oi, I'm here. Talk to me, don't talk to them. And basically we were all like, yes, you can, and you will do. And we got you through that wobble. You know, and it was phenomenal. And not only did that, smashed it under the 24 hours by nearly a whole hour.
Yeah,
it was incredible. And at the end, when I'm trying to push you, and you were going, oh, I don't care if I've missed the 24, and I'm like, no, I'm pushing you, I want to get you under the 23. We just missed it because God knows where the stadium was. It was a very long way out from where I thought it was, but
it was miles away.
it genuinely was. But the difference in 2 years was absolutely incredible. And the crewing for you that first time, I think you know, you have to see it in all things, in business, in all things. You have to see someone to know you can do it. You need to see your role models. You need to see the people who are doing that, who are going, yeah, I can see this, I can do this. But actually also in the ultra, it was a case of that first one, we started walking at 1 a.m, and we were kind of walk running by that point on the North Downs. And we finished at 9:15 in the stadium. And I was like, well, I didn't even know I could, be up and be moving for that amount of time. And I didn't cover as far as, a 50K was, but I was like, oh yeah, well, I can definitely do that. And it was also experiencing that and going, yeah, I can. So now it's a case of, it was also for ages you were saying you'd found the best at running underwear, and I was like, yeah, whatever. And then when I tried it, I was like, yes, you have found the best running underwear. So if Teresa comes up with a mad idea, I just have to say, yes, Teresa, I will be joining you.
I think you have the same influence on other people, Vic, including myself. I mean, from what I'm hearing, and I think this is kind of like quite important to get across, is with a marathon training and road running, it seems there's a consistent beat, right? You follow stuff, and for people to start off with, to aspire to that is quite difficult. What I am finding and hearing from you guys is actually with the ultras, and it's not just an ultra, it could be a trail, any trail, it's knowing or being you're pushed to different limits in completely a non-emotional setting to start off with. So it's not that you push to limits because something's gone wrong with your kids or your family or that. You're there because you don't know what the elements are going to be like. Okay, you don't know whether or not it's going to be hot or cold, and if there's going to be enough water. And you have to learn from all of that experience, and you're learning each time. And I think that's kind of important, because you do the first one and you kind of go, okay, that's fine. But then it's because it's a mental game, and because you're learning, and how you go over styles is a different way that you might do it the first time, because you're just like, well, I need to get my leg over. But to do like the speed and that is you learning all the time. And I think that probably then helps with the mindset, and then going on to do another challenge, because I know certainly for the last, I kind of like just come back from a very challenging skiing, but from doing the ultra and from running with you guys, is there's always something more to learn. And it's learning about yourself, but also just learning, which I think is phenomenal. I suppose really what you're saying to me is absolutely truly inspiring. But the burning question that everybody asks is, how the hell do you do it? Because you both work full time, you're both mums, you're both like individuals. So how do you manage it? How do you work it so that you're achieving something for yourself and still, to me, holding it all together with life?
Go on, you go, T. How are you holding it together?
It's that want, isn't it? If you want to do it, you're going to find that opportunity to do it. So yes, it is a juggle. So for me, I get up majorly early to get my training done, but then that way my evenings are free to deal with the kids and bits and bobs. But it's that me time, and that's what I cherish. It's amazing what a run can do for you, for your mind. If you've got some like things on your mind, or you're planning something like a lesson, when you take yourself out on a run, by the end of that run, you've thought things through and you find answers to things, or you can just take it as that moment to unwind and de-stress. And that's what running does for me. So I find that time to get myself out on a run, my mental well-being.
Yeah. And I think that's largely the same. It's protecting the times that you have got in your calendar for when the run's going to happen, and prioritizing that as far as possible. And if work gets in the way, like it did sort of last week, I did my I did my tempo run from work in the morning because I had to be out sort of Thursday night. I think there is also as part of that broader thing, you say, how do you do it with family, with job, with everything else? There is some sort of give and take. So, this year I've sort of promised my husband Bob, with the building work and everything going on, I'm sticking to the shorter stuff. So I'm not, okay, we are doing a marathon in June, but that's a fun one. But it's not. Yeah, that's for the picnic and the views and the medal, which obviously we're all going for. But these couple of years is probably going to be a case of fewer bits of those extreme bits, but I want to build up. Stones is something that's on my list. Even looking at, and I've said I don't want to do, I'd never been saying I want to do 100 or anything. And then I saw the blooming arc of attrition, which is one of the hardest you can do. And I was like, that looks bloody interesting. So it won't be for a couple of years. But there are things, never say never.
And I think that's quite interesting because obviously I've only done 50k and I'm not in the league of you guys. And certainly I think it is about a bit of give and take. But for me, it is the boundaries, because actually for me, like with you, Teresa, it's just I'm out before the kids get up, because then I can clear my mind. I can deal with whatever's going on in my mind, work out what I'm going to do for the rest of the day, and then I'm fully present. And I think that's clear for the boundaries, and boundaries can look different from various different people. You don't have to be running a marathon, an ultra, or trying to achieve a game. Actually, just by, setting the boundary of, kids, I'm having a bath on a Sunday, for half an hour, just don't, unless you've cut yourself and you're dying, just don't talk to me. I'm having an audio book, or I'm just sitting with some candles. Boundaries are different for people, and sort of like your mental health is certainly different for people. But I tend to find that it doesn't matter what you do. If you turn up for yourself and you're grounded, then you can serve so much better yourself and the others that are surrounding you.
I mean, completely agree. If I don't run 3 times a week, the head monkeys get in charge, and we don't want that.
Yeah, 100%. I suppose, like, we've talked about obviously the difference between marathons and trails, and then, like you, Vic, it is a bit of give and take, because and Teresa, you're well versed in this. Your husband's also a triathlete, and it's working together and planning. So I suppose, really, for people that are thinking about this in a typical training day, you've set your boundaries, you've set your goals. I'm very much a believer into incorporating other forms of training, because, is there things that you incorporate, like strength, flexibility? What would you say your benefits of doing this, sort of like, or is it just rest days?
So yeah, rest days for me, I tend to most weeks have at least have sort of 2 rest days, because you've got to listen to your body. You can get tired. I also, since lockdown, with all the sort of the new apps coming out and the online videos, I do now do sort of a yoga, and I try to do a strength, even though I don't enjoy it. I try to do a strength once a week. But it really does make a difference. With the yoga, it's all about the stretching, which really helps. I don't stretch enough. And I stretch more.
I mean, I think the stretching is important. I've got very lazy with that at the moment, and I am suffering. And also the strength, again, it was the lockdown, and it was the Joe Wicks probably did me better good when we were doing that every day. And of course it got, lockdown, you're like, well, I want to tick off every day. I'm going to do bloody every day while he's doing it. And it was, we'd be doing those like 5k challenges or something, and I'd be doing it before I'd done my Joe Wicks, and then I'd come back in time to start at 9 a.m. with him. But that certainly helped me a lot, kind of getting back in shape after Lyra. I think the Joe Wicks more than anything really helped my core sort of back. But I must say at the moment, I have become, life's got in the way of a lot of that. So it would need sharpening up. It's because I'm not really training for anything big at the moment. So I'm just kind of on drift mode. There's always a low level of that when you're saying, where are you? I'm always, at any point in the year, I should be able to go out and run a half marathon on the trail and not really suffer. That's kind of a baseline I'd start from.
Yeah, I think that's important in one respect, because it's quite interesting. When you start off running, the first part of it is always sheer hell. Even to a 5K, and I don't even like 5Ks because a lot of it's speed work. And as you get older,
who does? They're horrible.
Yeah, and as you get older and you're menopausal and you're a female, and the endurance is a lot easier to do. But I think it's just the building up over time, because your body does remember. So once you built it and you do your first 5K, then you do your second one, or then it's a 10K or your half marathon. And so I noticed, certainly for my running journey, it did start off very small. Now my baseline start is, you could probably say to me, Michelle, do you fancy going for half marathon? Just for a run, for the sheer hell of it. Yeah, all right then. Because that is the way I've been built. And because I know the impact of running and doing the differences, I've worked specifically on my core and the muscles, and you do notice that. But equally, as I've got older, yoga is becoming very much prevalent, because I just feel that stretching needs to happen, because I don't know whether or not it's the impact or it's just evolution and the flexibility. And that then, when you look at it comes from ancient times, that you've got people that are 100 are still running marathons, and you just go, that's me, that's where I want to be, with my blue rinse. So it's really, really sort of different. So we've sort of like talked about a few of the differences. I suppose really the next question leading on for that is, I would think the preparation that you would do for a road run to an ultra and a trail is very different. Do you have any sort of like significant tidbits that you would share, or things that people have got to think about in terms of fuel, hydration differences?
It's definitely got to be that time on feet with the trails, drinking lots, and practicing with fueling, finding what works for you.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the biggest takeaways was solid fuel. So, you do road marathons and you kind of go down the gel route and things. And because you are running harder on the road and you're going for a time, you don't want blood diverted to your digestion system too much. So you go with more liquids based fueling. But actually, I found the solid fueling so much better, and I use that more also on faster runs as well. So you might be using kind of jelly blocks or something to just do that. Teresa's right, time on the feet, time on the types of conditions you're going to be on. There's no good running a training for Snowdon and coming out with us on what was a hilly but still relatively flat, when you needed to climb halfway up Mont Blanc for like the hill elevation you needed. It's you've got to run to the appropriate conditions you're going to.
I think other preparations, and certainly something that Teresa, you taught me, was the different types of shoes, and for different types of seasons. Epic run in the snow, great with a certain type of shoe, and then it sort of like got a bit warmer, and I was like, this is really hurting, what's happening? So it's the amount of shoes and the different types of shoes.
Running's meant to be a cheap sport. It isn't.
No. But I think I have more trainers, than I do have, or have ever worn in stilettos or anything else. So yes, staple. Now, we've talked a lot about different things, but everybody knows, and if they don't, then they will certainly be educated this evening, is more about, we all have good runs and bad runs, and that doesn't mean, and good days and bad days. whether or not you're doing a trail, an ultra, you know, just a normal marathon, half marathon, 10K. How have you kind of faced any of those challenges or setbacks in your journey, in your running journey, and how did you overcome them?
I guess everyone gets injured, don't they, from time to time. It's learning to listen to your body, and just recovering, taking that time to recover, because if you don't recover properly, it could have a knock-on effect later down the line. There's always another race, isn't there? So yeah, at the time it's really hard when you have to defer or whatever. Like we've never run a London Marathon together, Vicky, have we?
No.
We're supposed to. And yeah, I think I got injured, didn't I?
Yeah, you got injured because I've not. Yeah, I've been lucky on the big races. I don't think I've ever had to defer one of the big ones, but doesn't mean I've necessarily been in the best of states when I've, towed the start line, or in the best of conditional health. Teresa's right. There's always another race. It running teaches you huge resilience, which is, I think, part of the reason why I'm, encouraging my daughter, I wanted to share my love of running, but also doing a junior park run with us every Sunday is a really good lesson in small contained lesson in sort of resilience that running teaches you. And it is only you and putting your left foot in front of your right foot and repeating as many times as you need to till you get to the finish line.
I think that's kind of a good point, because I know that there's been times, and you've alluded to it as well, Teresa, you're phoning up, you're going, I just can't do this. I'm halfway through this and I just go, I just want to stop. Okay. Or I know that I've had runs where I've got an event that's really important to me, and that day it's just gone horribly wrong. Quite a few of my training runs was for the Amsterdam, where very much was like, you must do gels. If you want to get this time, you must do gels. And I just couldn't work out the body composition and when I should be taking them. And, there was 3-4 that were just awful. And I was just like, I didn't even think I could achieve actually getting around 26.2 miles. I'd done previous stuff. So it's again, though, at the time, for a runner or for someone that wanted to achieve a goal, it's horrid, because you really, if you get too far into your head, and I think that's probably again where you get your support network to go, it's fine, you still manage to do it, you can still do it.
It's also about those races that don't go to plan as well, like North Downs, or even for me, South Downs. Yes,
yeah,
I did achieve sort of one goal, but I still came away from South Downs and hit a real low sort of point, and it's taking those weeks to just sort of reflect, without beating yourself up, and that's really hard.
Yeah.
I'm curious, was that because you had set yourself expectations, or it just didn't feel right?
Yeah, I had set myself some sort of expectations, but also I think I went out too hot. So I knew the weather was going to be bad, hot, but in my head I thought, oh, if I get as much done as I can in that time, I've got a lot of it ticked off before that heat comes. And I think I just tried to push my body just too much. And so, yeah.
And to be fair, it was practically, I mean, it was heat from the gun, wasn't it? It was such a hot day.
But then on the other hand, you could have gone slower and still been hit by the heat just as bad.
Yeah. And I think you can only race with what's there on the day. And if you look in relation to where Teresa was with the other like athletes, and she was fourth, there were people who were, way more experienced than you. So I mean, Edie went out, she was in second place, wasn't she? She went out hard and spent about 4 hours lying down under a bush at about 50 miles, you know, or wherever we, you know, saw you up on that Downsland bit. I think where we swapped Claire and Chris over. You know, no, that must have been after 50. It was 70 something, but yeah.
So certainly
your biggest critique, aren't you? And it's just, yeah, taking that time to reflect. It's really hard.
Well, as you said, we are our own worst critics, and I think it's, as you say, it's resilience, but it's also teaching yourself to be kind, and that's something that I know I certainly, being kind to myself and bigging me up, is I find that really challenging, and that's just, you know, you reel off like saying, well, how do you do it? And I go, well, I do this and this, and some people just looking at it like, oh wow. And it's not until you pause and you reflect and you go, well, actually, what was the positives? And that's something else that I think as runners and achieving, and particularly trail running, is trying to flip it around to say not what you haven't achieved, but what you have achieved and what you've learned. And it's just flipping that kindness around, which with trails certainly goes back to, it's the mental stability, it's being within the nature, it's taking off the pressure, and enjoying it. I think that's kind of key. So what's next for you both?
So
Go on, you first.
I'm off back to Snowdonia. Going to give the 100k a go. I'm now thinking why. Yeah, and then I've got a couple of sort of like warm up ultras, because it's, I always find it's quite good as training runs to do some other races, because you've got the fuel stations and the mileage and all that mapped out for you, rather than have to do something planned by yourself. So that's what I tend to do.
So just for our listeners, talk us through. It's the second time you're doing Snowdonia.
Yeah, so I did 50k last year, so I'm going back for the 100k.
Okay, and taking all those good learnings, and it's, from what I can remember, it's quite technical.
The weather's probably going to be awful this time, and
yeah, you can't get lucky. I mean, it's Wales, isn't it? You won't get as lucky as you did last year.
No. And Vic, for yourself.
Oh, so as I said, you know, I promised I wasn't going to do anything nutty this year, and then we saw the Giants Head Marathon, and that looked like fun. So we're going to go and do that in June. So I'm just spending my sort of time keeping ticking over. I'll build up later on for the Giants Head, just have some fun, and then aim to have a quick cross country season, because I will have moved up an age category in July. So good to get, you know, come in at the bottom end of an age category, although Teresa's still in that category and Kim is in that category. So I'm only going for a third place.
Never say never. Now, just from this evening, and obviously I've run with you and you both, and you're very aspiring. Is there any sort of thoughts of how you could take your knowledge, your experience, and perhaps share it to a wider audience? Any thoughts about a book? And I know lots of people have said, yeah, there's loads out there, but you're very unique individuals. First of all, mums and working mums, and you know, the older, where actually, I don't mean that derogatory of being older, but we've taken life experience, we've taken where, you know, getting a good for age place and pace is important to something that is very much individual and unique, but very much sharing those experiences and the challenges that you face and how you felt.
So for me, yeah, no, I'd say no to a book. My only advice would be, yeah, if you've ever considered an ultra, just take that first step and enter. It's that phrase, isn't it? What scares you makes you stronger. Yeah.
Yeah.
You never know, do you? It might be something you really enjoy, or it might not be for you. But unless you try it, you don't know.
I think that's, I I wholeheartedly agree. It's you don't know what you're capable of until you try something, and you might find a love for it, but you'll definitely find a good community of people to be with.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. The people with the ultras are just brilliant. You meet people,
Yeah.
and you've got such a bigger support network. On a marathon start line, you might say hello to a person, but very rarely would look them up after a race. But with the ultras, you normally sort of end up friending them on Strava, and they're following your adventures. You're following them. You'll bump into them at another ultra. Yeah,
it is a lovely community. I remember the first one that I did at the Chiltern Ridge, that obviously you did the year after, Michelle. It was just like a great big party, and it was absolutely pouring with rain at the beginning, and that kind of didn't matter, and we were all having fun. And by the end of it, it just was a party. So you're like, had been out for 5 and a bit hours, had a mobile picnic, nice countryside, came back, and they were giving you beers. Clearly, what's not to like?
And Man versus Horse was a bit like that as well.
Oh, that was Man versus Horse. That was awesome. Yeah, definitely go back and do that again.
You're tempting me both. Just gonna close up, and you shared sort of like, I think, your ultimate last words, which is, if you think about doing an ultra or trail running, just get out there and do it, because it is, unless you try it, you'll never ever know. So thank you for joining me, and for all my listeners, if you have enjoyed this episode, then please ensure that you rate, like, and share the show to others. And if you're wanting to find out more, or from our great celebs in my eyes, then please contact me directly, and I'm sure that we can gather the information. So to everybody that's listening, until next time, remember to elevate your health and well-being from the inside out to achieve whatever you want to achieve.